Ok, merci tout le monde. On va commencer. Avant de commencer, je vais mentionner qu'il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa se trouve sur un territoire non cédé de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe, dont la culture et la présence ont enrichi et continuent d'enrichir.
So we find ourselves today on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe. Hello, welcome to the committee meeting.
Segment of the meeting. I don't believe we have any regrets that have been registered, Eric. Okay, so I'll ask you, Eric, to do the roll call, please.
Councillor Tierney. Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Leeper. Councillor Kavanagh.
Present.
Vice Chair Curry.
Here.
Chair DeRush.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you. I understand Councillor Leeper will be joining us online shortly, I'm sure. First item is notices and meeting information for meeting participants and the public. I don't have anything. Second is declaration of interest. Don't see any. Confirmation of minutes. LRSC minutes 8 October 27, 2024. 3.1 carried. Carried. 3.2, the joint transit and light rail subcommittee minutes from Thursday, December 14, 2023. Is that carried? Carried, thank you. First item on the agenda is item 4, Transit Services Department. 4.1, update on the LRT action plan, response to the OLRT public inquiry recommendations. There is a presentation. Mr. Cormier is here and available to answer questions are Mr. Holder and Mr. Nahas, legal counsel. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Cormier. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. All right. So, as you mentioned, we are here to provide a status update on the work that the City has done on our action plan to respond to the recommendations for the Ottawa Light Rail Transit Public Inquiry. If I could have the next slide, please. So just as a reminder, while Transit Services is the City's lead for the action plan, there are many key contributors, both within the City and outside, who've contributed to the response. So that includes within Transit Services, our Transit Engineering Services Program, the Rail Construction Program, Transit Service Delivery and Rail Operations, and the Strategic Communications and External Relations team. We've also consulted with RTG and Alstom to make sure that the City's actions are included and are aligned with the actions that are being taken by our maintenance partner. Within the larger city, the Office of the City Manager and Legal Services were involved in the response, as was the Office of the City Clerk. Finance and Corporate Services, in terms of supply services and finance services, and of course, Infrastructure and Water Services is the city's main overseer of major infrastructure projects. Next slide, please. So just a bit of history. As you'll recall, on April the 28th, 2023, the Light Rail Subcommittee received the City's action plan, which was then confirmed by Council on May 10th. As part of our focus on transparency, we came back to this subcommittee in September and committed to provide a further report and update to the Light Rail Subcommittee in early 2024, which is why I'm here today. The City accepted and agreed with all 103 recommendations of the inquiry. 8 of the recommendations were the responsibility of the provincial and federal governments, and we discharged our responsibility for those by highlighting them to the provincial and federal government's attention, to the responsible ministries. 89 of the 95 recommendations within the City's control have been completed, and the 6 remaining recommendations relate primarily to either light rail construction or to transit operations and are well in progress. And so what we'll be recommending today is that staff continue to provide updates on those specific recommendations that are still in progress, either to the Transit Commission or to the Light Rail Subcommittee, and that we commit to notifying Council via memo when all of the work has been finally completed. But I'll speak more about that in a minute. Next slide, please. So to speak just for a moment about the work that's taken place since we last provided an update for you, Supply Services did bring forward an update to the City's P3 policy and administrative procedures that was completed in Q3 2023. Legal Services continues their review of the Employee Code of Conduct, and updates are anticipated in Q1 and Q2 of 2024. Finance and Corporate Services provided their update to the business case and project management policy, which was completed and approved by Council in Q4 of 2023, and that action alone closed off 15 of the recommendations that were outstanding. And as part of the city's response to the public inquiry process, a records management plan was established. And in our report, we detailed the great work that's taken place to rebuild relationships with Council, to rebuild relationships with RTG and RTM, and to provide greater transparency to the public in terms of memos being published on ottawa.ca and work being done to increase our oversight and Council's oversight over Stage 2 light rail construction. Next slide, please. So you'll recall when we first made the presentation outlining the city's action plan, the public inquiry recommendations were broken into 12 headings or 12 themes. To date, 3 of those themes remain outstanding. The rest of them we consider to be fully completed or implemented in city policies so that that policy will carry forward the accountability going forward. So the 3 that I'll speak about in just a second are preparing for and achieving a successful handover and the start to public service itself, and then specific recommendations that are operational in nature that relate to light rail. Next slide, please. So over the next 3 slides, I'll list the 6 outstanding recommendations. I'll speak to the work that the city is doing to continue to move forward on them, and hopefully by the end, it will be clear how updates will continue to be brought forward to ensure Council's continuing oversight over this work. So the first outstanding recommendation that we'd like to talk about is recommendation 71. So this relates to the handover process. So on a new system where maintainers are new to the system, the Commissioner was concerned that public entities allow for a learning curve and avoid putting undue pressure on the maintainers. So this came out of concerns around the launch of Stage 1, where there was a perception of an unnecessary volume of work orders that were placed on RTG and RTM. So we have taken a close look at this. We're working collaboratively with RTG and TNEX as Stage 2 extensions approach substantial completion. All parties will ensure that a clear understanding exists between how items will be escalated for maintenance based on their importance and how things will fall, for example, on a minor deficiencies list that relates to the pre-handover work or will be brought forward as work orders post-handover. So we're mitigating that risk by working very closely with our partners. Next slide, please. The next 2 relate to public service, so recommendations 81 and 82. Recommendation 81 looks at minimizing disputes and delays, in resolving issues and clearly defining the distinction between issues that relate purely to maintenance and those that might be covered under the warranty of the constructor. Again, we're working very closely with RTG and TNEX to ensure that a clear understanding exists, and RTG itself is committed to adding robust warranty protocols as a part of Stage 2, but they feel that a sufficient understanding exists that this won't become an issue. Recommendation 82, the constructor should be required to make an objective assessment of any anticipated retrofit work and scale resources that will be made available post-handover to match that assessment. This was concerned about a particular circumstance that arose following the launch of Stage 1, where there was still retrofit work that needed to be completed. Here, we've taken lessons learned away from the launch of Stage 1, and we're exercising appropriate oversight to make sure that all retrofits receive an objective assessment, that we have a clear sense of the scope involved. RTG has increased staffing to ensure that retrofits to existing vehicles have a minimal impact on day-to-day operations and feel that the requirements are now much better understood. So again, there's a sense that lessons have been learned and incorporated into Stage 2. Next slide, please. The last 3 recommendations relate to light rail line 1. So recommendation 96, there's a recommendation that the city, RTG, and its subcontractors and Alstom follow through on outstanding investigations regarding the root cause of the derailment on August 8th, 2021. This is absolutely still continuing. RTG attended Transit Commission in October of last year to provide a very technical update. They've committed to providing us with a consolidated root cause report. We are anticipating a further update in either March or April of this year to the Transit Commission, and we are working with RTG to have experts available to speak to the work that's being done and to respond to questions. So recommendation 97, a permanent solution to the wheel rail interface issues needs to be identified and implemented in a timely manner. This work is ongoing. RTG will provide a consolidated report on the wheel-rail interface, and again, we'll be attending Transit Commission in 2024 to provide an update. Testing with the National Research Council continues, so we are moving forward with testing on that. And the last outstanding recommendation is number 102. Alstom should follow through with its plans to replace the spline axles on light rail vehicles following the problems with excessive wear that was identified in 2021. So the spline axle retrofit program is under discussion as part of the larger sustainable solution for the axle hub failure. So we're working collaboratively with RTG and with Alstom to find a permanent solution. They are committed to bringing back a permanent solution. There are retrofit changes that are now being considered with regard to the axles for newer Stage 2 vehicles. So that work is progressing, and further updates will come to the Transit Commission in the normal course as we're able to bring useful updates forward. Next slide, please. So our recommendation today, through this update, we are recommending that the Light Rail Subcommittee and Council receive this status update and end formal reporting of the action plan. The Light Rail Committee, or the Light Rail Subcommittee, excuse me, will continue to receive updates on recommendations 71, 81, and 82. Those will be brought forward as part of our regular Stage 2 construction updates because that work relates to the handover and to the work that's being done to ensure a smooth transfer of responsibility from TNEX to the city. The Transit Commission will be provided regular updates on recommendations 96, 97, and 102 as part of ongoing operational updates, and we are committed to providing Council with notice of the final closure of these 6 remaining recommendations via memo. So our plan would be, once Council approves the plan, to provide a memo to confirm the path forward, and then there would be a formal final closeout when we feel comfortable saying that all of these recommendations have been finally fully brought to a close. But I think what we are saying is that the Council's oversight will be preserved through the ongoing operational updates that we have already promised to bring forward on the derailment root cause analysis, on the axle bearing sustainable solution, and on the work that we are doing to ensure a smooth handover to Stage 2. So I think what we are saying is that it would be unnecessarily repetitious to bring updates on the action plan when those updates are already going to be brought forward in the normal course of business. Next slide, please. So the next steps, staff will continue to work collaboratively with our partners to improve existing service on O-Train Line 1. We will continue to implement Stage 1 LRT lessons learned into Stage 2 and into future infrastructure projects. We shouldn't lose sight that the focus of the inquiry was on light rail, but the recommendations would apply to all major infrastructure projects, and the city has acted accordingly to encode the recommendations and the best practices into our policies that would affect all future P3 relationships and all major infrastructure projects. We will continue to act in a manner that improves transparency and clear communication, both to Council and to the public. The progress on the recommendations outlined in this report will be updated and will continue to be made public on ottawa.ca and octranspo.com. We will, as I've said, continue to make regular updates to the Transit Commission and the Light Rail Subcommittee so that those areas that fall within the terms of reference of the various committees will be fully reported on. And Stage 2 progress updates will be provided at the Light Rail Subcommittee by my colleague, Mr. Morgan. Next slide. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
OK, merci, Monsieur Cormier. Si je comprends bien, on n'a pas de...
If I understand correctly, there are no delegations. Eric, is that right? That's right. Okay, so we'll move to questions. Councillor Tierney and Leaper are taking part in this meeting as well. We'll start with Councillor Gower. You have the floor.
Thank you to staff for the update. I don't think there are any surprises in this update. We've been getting regular updates here at this committee and other committees as well. It's been 18 months since almost 18 months since the inquiry was published, or the report was published. And as you noted, there are 14 recommendations that relate to the province or the federal government. Have we received, or are we aware of any formal or informal response to the inquiry from the other 2 levels of government?
Chair, just to clarify, there are 8 that belong to the federal government and the provincial government. I don't believe we have received any formal response. We will, of course, as part of this work, make sure that our colleagues and our partners at the federal and the provincial levels are aware of our status. There's no responsibility on the part of the federal or provincial governments to provide a report back to us. They are the holders of the report and are free to act as they see fit. But no, to my knowledge, I don't believe we've received a solid indication that they're taking action.
Okay, and in terms of our communications to the province and the federal government, who are we communicating with? What departments or what officials within the other governments?
Chair, if you'll give me a second, I have it in front of me. So, Chair, we are working with stakeholders which include the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, Transport Canada, Infrastructure Canada, the National Capital Commission, the Government of Ontario's Ministry of Transportation, and of course, the Rideau Transit Group. Those are the external stakeholders who we keep apprised of our progress.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, je ne vois pas de membres qui ont des questions.
Any other members with questions? Councillor Lowe.
This is all very informative and no doubt a lot of work, I imagine, has been put in over the last 18 months, almost 18 months. One of the, in recommendation 82, when you were talking about recommendation 82, you said that the contractors should make objective assessments of anticipated retrofits. At least in my mind, retrofits seem like something that should be addressed, should have been, I guess, part of construction. I know things change once in a while, but it seems to me like retrofitting means that this was something done after the fact. Are there any sort of examples of that in stage one?
Mr. Chair, for example, the biggest example is on the vehicle side, where we accepted the vehicle. As we tested the vehicle, there was new retrofits coming out. Those retrofits need to be applied to the vehicle after the fact. Even on the infrastructure side, the project agreement does allow for minor defects, and so that's kind of, you could put minor defects into the category of retrofits, some final cleanup work. So there's kind of a package for both the infrastructure and the vehicles. Obviously, in stage two, we're trying to make sure that that work and those minor deficiencies are minimized so that there is not an overwhelming amount of work to be done after the fact.
Okay, understood. So I guess my own definition of retrofit may have been larger than yours. The other questions sort of relates to stage two, but then it comes back to stage one. These retrofits, I know a lot of the lessons, I should say, are being applied to stage two. The main one I can think of is the parafill wires. Are there opportunities, and will we ever explore kind of applying those lessons back to stage one in the future, if that makes sense?
Mr. Chair, obviously the biggest, I would say one of the bigger ones was the switch heaters, so going to gas switch heaters in the areas where the switches were highly exposed. So that was done to stage one. That's now being applied to stage two. There may be other residual ones where if over time we see the performance, the example you gave, is the catenary system actually is more reliable on stage two. There could be an opportunity in the future to go back and eliminate some of the parafills, for example, to improve the service there. But RTG and our partners in transit engineering are actively working on, finding any solutions, reliability improvements that are needed and required on stage one, and applying those kind of on the go forward. So I don't think at this point there's no plan to do a massive kind of retrofit of the overhead catenary system, but they are looking on a case-by-case basis to see what improvements could be made.
Okay, it's fair to assume that when the time comes, negotiations will happen, we'll find out about it, there'll be a storm about it, and all that stuff. So, no, thank you very much, and I look forward to the future updates.
Merci. On va passer maintenant à Conseiller
We
Brock.
can now move on to Councillor Brockington. You have the floor.
For the update, I have two quick questions. The three outstanding headings that you identified, what are the timelines to see those be completed?
Chair, some of them, it kind of depends on how you interpret them. So, for example, recommendation 71, or sorry, are you referring to all three of the headings, or are you referring to the three that are more operational in nature?
Oh, for the outstanding matters, what are staff's timelines to make sure those are completed in a timely fashion?
Fair enough. So I think for the three that relate to the handover of stage two, the recommendations were made in such a way that they're meant to apply on an ongoing basis forever. So in that sort of a sense, there's an ongoing responsibility that will never end. But I think the way that we're considering it is that once we get past the launch of the Stage 2 Southern Extension, we feel that there will be a proof of concept that we've successfully managed to incorporate those lessons into the way that it's done. And at that point, I think we would feel comfortable saying that they are incorporated into the city's practices going forward. So I think I would say there's likely to be major progress on all 6 of them this year, but I wouldn't want to tie us to a timeline. It's possible that the work for the sustainable solution will go further than that.
Okay, fair enough. And my other question is just about the city's responsibility on reporting back to the inquiry themselves. What's the requirement, remind me, to provide progress or status updates on progress on the various recommendations?
So Chair, to my knowledge, there is no formal requirement. This isn't like an audit where the auditor continues to have an oversight capacity and there's an accountability to the auditor. The Commission has finished its work, its recommendations were delivered. So I think there is certainly a responsibility to Council and to the public. So the way that we decided to move this forward was that staff committed to an action plan, and then the accountability to Council was to deliver on the action plan. So, I think we're discharging our responsibility by making our accountability first to the public and to Council, and then reporting on that progress to our partners at the provincial and federal governments. They may choose to ask further questions. They're certainly taking a great interest in it, but there will never be, the Commissioner will never provide a stamp on a plan to say, yes, your work is fully complete. That responsibility rests with us to carry it forward.
Excellent, thanks for that clarification. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just on that, like really, there's not even a mailbox for the Commission now, right? It doesn't exist. So for the reasons you outlined, our reporting back is to Council and a range of other very important stakeholders, but the Commission doesn't exist from a machinery of government point of view.
That's my understanding as well, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Just purely from an information flow perspective. So the recommendations, I don't know the actual number, but one of the recommendations clearly stated, as you said earlier, that Council needs to be apprised of everything that's going on, right? So we have this committee, we have Transit Commission, we have minutes that go into agendas, we have memos. I just was wondering if you could just list, and I'm just thinking if Councillor Gower or Chair Gower of the Transit Commission were to send out a message to councillors as a council as a whole, here are all the ways you are being kept apprised of what's going on that's different from last time, what would that list be?
I'm sorry, Chair, I'm not entirely sure that I understand the question.
Just in terms of all the ways that council as a whole is getting up-to-date information, like, and like, so if it's, say if one of them is a memo, that memo coming from Renee,
Yes.
coming from Michael, and that's obviously on the list, right? And we would list the minutes. Like, I'd like to have a list of all the ways that council is actually being kept up-to-date in terms of how these recommendations are going, and obviously trial running. What would that list look like?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So I think what we've committed to is that we will outline essentially that process in a memo that would go to Council. So this report, once the Light Rail Subcommittee receives it, will flow up to Council for their review, and they'll have an opportunity to ask questions as well. So I would say there will be a memo to confirm the further process. There will be updates that will be provided on specific items to the Light Rail Subcommittee and to the Transit Commission. The policies that have been passed by Council have a natural reporting up to the Finance and Corporate Services Committee, to FinCor. So for example, the P3 policy, the business case and project management policy lie within the terms of reference of FinCor. I would say there would certainly be a reasonable expectation that the next time we have a major infrastructure project that the city enters into, that staff would, as part of their reporting, confirm that the lessons learned from this inquiry would be incorporated into that. I think staff have made that commitment. I think, if I can be a tiny bit philosophical, part of the recommendations go to the way that we react or the way that we maintain our relationship with each other going forward. So, I think it would be fair to say that every time staff bring data or bring transparent reporting or highlight the importance of Council's oversight over staff's work, the spirit of the public inquiry will be reflected in that. So I know that's a bit wishy-washy, but you know, it really does, if we're doing our work correctly, the recommendations and the philosophy that's outlaid in these 103 recommendations should really be woven through all of the reports that we're bringing forward, all of the conversations that staff are having with council. It goes to the heart of the relationship between, you know, the public having representatives who are then holding staff accountable for the work that's being done using public funds.
I wholeheartedly agree, because, I mean, you can have a commission do all that work, do the recommendations, and we check them off, say they're done. But if there isn't constant reminder, this is why we do things this way now, then, you know, there really hasn't been a real lesson learned. Okay, thank you for that. I just want to make sure, you know, because sometimes the public will write to us and say, you know, what's going on with that? And you want to be able to make sure, like, that we all understand what's going on. It hasn't been just that we've said they're completed and we're done. So thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. On recommendation 35, about there's a person that's been hired to oversee the handover for the Trillium line. Can you help me understand how we will get information from that person? Are they going to report directly to us? How is the flow of information on that?
1 second, just let me get 35 in front of me so that I can read it.
So in respect of the systems integration verifier and their oversight role for trial running, so we are relying on them to be essentially in the room to verify and validate the results. At this point, there's no specific reporting line from them to council, but we would be providing our daily updates on the results of trial running, a final technical briefing on the results of trial running, and then we would confirm through the process, and there's a series of independent kind of oversight roles, we would confirm to you that all of the independent oversight roles have been met. Obviously, the systems integration verifier, we've asked to have them look over trial running. We would have the independent certifier who would confirm substantial completion. We have an independent safety auditor who will be confirming the safety of the system. And then in the case of the Trillium line, we also have TRANCEPO Canada who will be issuing a railway operating certificate indicating that we're able to go. And so we wouldn't be inviting those people to speak to you directly, but we would be confirming that they have provided their approval and acknowledgement that the appropriate steps have been taken.
So they report to you?
Correct.
Okay, so, and then you will be updating us on that. Okay, so they're there for the entire handover period. Is it like just starts just before, you know, during that period only? I hate to say it's a temp job, but it's, you know, when the handover is completed, they're not there?
So, Mr. Chair, depending on the role, I mean, so in stage 2, one of the changes that was highlighted in the public inquiry was, for example, to ensure that the safety auditor was hired at the beginning of the project. So the safety auditor has been there from the beginning. The independent certifier has been there from the beginning. TRANCEPO Canada has been with us the whole way. The systems integration verifier has been with us the whole way. The only change that was made was to ask them to provide additional oversight for the trial running period. So that's a new function, but they have been along for the ride. And so if temp only in the sense that they will only be with the city for the 5-year construction period.
Okay, and will that same person possibly be for stage 2 for the east-west, or?
So, and then again, on the east-west, we have the similar, and sometimes it's the same group, sometimes it's not. Independent certifier looking at substantial completion for east-west, independent safety auditor looking at safety certification for east-west. We've actually also asked the safety auditor to take on an assessor role, which is kind of a higher level of scrutiny for safety on stage 2. We do have a systems integration verifier, again, that's in this case is on east-west is a slightly different firm, or a different firm, so they're providing the function. And then for east-west, it's not regulated by TRANCEPO Canada, so they're not involved. But you still have those 3 groups that are confirming that the system is safe, it's been integrated, and it's substantially complete.
Okay. You were saying something a little earlier about the catenary system, and is there major changes in terms of quality or levels of that they must meet with stage 2 versus with stage 1?
Mr. Chair, there is no change per se in the quality expectations or the standard, but having, learned the lesson about the parafills being exposed, parafills, so a specific subcomponent of the catenary system that is exposed to highway chemicals and salts, that was kind of, I would say, disintegrating more quickly than was expected. That particular component has been eliminated on the stage 2 catenary systems so that we won't see that particular failure mode. So it's a different configuration that does not include that specific element that we saw that was failing on stage 1.
Okay, and for stage 1, that is being changed over?
In stage 1, they have put in a program, they did inspections, they did cleaning, and then they put on some additional boots on the actual parafill unit to protect the point that was failing, to give it more resilience to the chemicals. It is something that transit engineering is still following, though, and so there may be more to come on that in the future if it gets changed out to a different material.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members or councillors? Just a couple questions from my perch. Obviously, lots of fanfare, lots of drama when the report's being prepared, especially in an election campaign. Less fanfare when we are saying that we've achieved or very close to achieving all the recommendations that were in that report. So I thank staff right across the organization for the work they've done to undertake it. There could be a cynical view from some saying, well, when governments do these reports, they just sit on a shelf. And so how would you answer that question? Is this report going to sit on a shelf?
Chair, I would say not at all. I think there have been tangible results that we can see. So, for example, there's more transparent reporting. As I mentioned, we are now publishing all memos to council proactively on ottawa.ca. That's a direct result from this. There are policies that have been encoded that will govern staff's work going forward. Those are things that we can certainly point to say this didn't exist before, or it didn't exist in this form and now it has changed. As Mr. Morgan mentioned, there have been a number of very tangible changes that have been made to the way that we're doing the oversight of the handover and how we're conducting our work on stage 2. So there have been a lot of lessons learned that we can point to. The integration of the oversight bodies at an earlier stage. I think the proof will somewhat be in the pudding as we do the handover, and I think some of the improvements that you'll see very tangibly in terms of how we report to you and how smoothly it goes come as a result of the work that's been done. As I mentioned, Legal Services is conducting an exercise to update the city's code of conduct. So, I think the way that the recommendations were drafted, the way that it was put together, the kinds of recommendations that were being brought weren't the sort where there would ever be able to be check marks to say, yes, this is absolutely done, in the way that we sometimes see with an audit, where it's very targeted and very specific, and the action plan is very tangible, and there's a very clear black and white distinction between what was there before and what is not. In some cases, there's changes in philosophy, there's changes in relationship that were suggested or recommended by the commission that we've put into place. So I think, though, that there are certainly a number of things that we can point to. And when we come and bring our final memo to council to indicate that we feel that this is finally closed to the point where we don't really need to speak about it anymore as an active project that staff are actively working on, we'll list those very tangible results that we can see. And there will likely be one or two more of them than between then and now.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Some time ago, Councillor Gower had a really good inquiry where he asked for all of the kind of oversight, third-party spotlights that we've put on the LRT project. This obviously is one, but there are several others that were instituted in this term of council and the last term of council. So I wonder if Mr. Morgan or Mr. Cormier could speak to not only your commitment to follow up on this report, but the other reports that have been undertaken that were outlined in that inquiry to Councillor Gower.
Mr. Chair, so in terms of the oversight and the change in process, there's been a series of changes, even down to how we deliver the projects and how we have, I'll do an introduction later as part of our next presentation, but a dedicated construction team in the field who's boots on the ground every day. So that was kind of one of the key changes that we made in the Stage 2 program. Obviously, the safety auditor, safety assessor that we've engaged from the start of the program, the safety, the systems integration verifier, helping with the system integration issues, which are called out in the public inquiry. And then just the whole approach to substantial completion and this issue around, is it ready to go, is it not ready to go, and making sure we have a fulsome approach to that. So we are absolutely, considering all those oversight lessons and making sure the right people are in place, and that in both sides, that the owner's acting properly and that the private sector players are acting properly too. So there's a lot of collaboration. I think, to follow on the previous question, you will see a lot of callback to this public inquiry in the future. As new reports come through, as new recommendations come through, we will rely on the inquiry and those recommendations as a basis to support future recommendations.
Hey, thank you for that, those answers, and thank you again for the very thorough work on the follow-up to the commission. The report recommendation before us today is that the Light Rail Subcommittee receive the status update of the action plan for the Ottawa Light Rail Rapid Transit Public Inquiries recommendations attached as document 1 to this report for information, and 2, that the Light Rail Subcommittee recommend that Council direct transit services to provide further updates to the Transit Commission on any remaining items in the action plan that are still in progress which relate to transit operations until such time that all recommendations are closed. Is that carried? Carried. Great. On to the next item is 4.2, Stage 2 Light Rail Transit Project. Over to staff. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to invite up Jocelyn Degg to assist me in the presentation this morning. Jocelyn is the manager of construction, so she's got 4 teams working for her, a traffic team, two construction teams, east and west, and then the Trillium line team. So we'll just swap out her placard. So Jocelyn's going to give you an update on the Confederation line, and then I will follow with an update on the Trillium line. So we'll take you through. Obviously, we're pretty excited. The past week, there's been lots of news. The Confed East getting that first train on the tracks, that was a big event for us, and so a big milestone. We're very excited about that. A lot of things happening. The weather's been fantastic for us, so a lot of progress in the west, and then obviously, progress on the south line as well. There's been a lot of questions about, for example, the intersection of Bowesville and Earl Armstrong, and we're hoping to get that turned on in the next week, and the good weather will allow us to do that. But we can also talk to you, we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about training and the final commissioning and where we are in the process, so you have a good understanding of what we're targeting and what the ranges of timelines are for the Trillium line. So with that, I'll pass it over to Jocelyn, and she'll walk you through the Confederation line.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we can move into our next slide. We're going to start in the east from Montreal Station, moving eastwards. So to follow up on Michael Morgan's intro, we had a very exciting start to our week where we had our first train move in the east. It's currently sitting at Montreal Station, which is probably the most exciting aspect of that station today. Otherwise, the active works taking place today at the station include mechanical, electrical works, precast stair installation, interior, exterior finishes. As well, what you can see here is the new red fence that goes around the station, and this just helps delineate the safe area to be working at the station while there's energized OCS line overhead. We can move into the next slide. So here's sort of a close-up of some of the works taking place at Montreal Station. Again, you see this nice, bright, conspicuous red fence keeping everybody safe and away from the electrified zone. And so next station, we have Jeanne d'Arc. Here, the active works on the station include, again, mechanical, electrical works, installation of devices, so communication devices, fire alarm safety devices, testing, commissioning. As well, maybe an interesting point is that this is the most advanced station in the east, and so it's really coming along nicely. As we can see here in this photo, we have work on Jeanne d'Arc Boulevard as well. So this is part of the sort of exciting resurfacing for improved active transportation in this area. So we'll have a widened sidewalk on one end of the bridge, or one edge of the bridge rather, and on the other we will have a new multi-use pathway. So that construction is taking place simultaneous to the station construction below. Another piece of work in this area is noise wall construction. So we're building what is called B6 noise wall along the north side of the westbound highway. In this photo, it would be just slightly to the left. Next station, we have Convent Glen. Here we're doing some exterior finishes, mechanical, electrical work, continuing testing and commissioning. As we move eastwards into Place d'Orleans, similar types of activities here. We have interior, exterior finishes, some mechanical, electrical works, elevator works taking place as well. And then our final station in the east, Trim, similar types of activities again, mechanical, electrical works, doing sort of systems installations, testing, commissioning, elevator installation and adjustments. Other works in this area, so we see the civil works taking place on the left side, so we're doing some grading and some drainage. And that work is coordinated with Honey, seeing as how it's in and around their lands. And there's an access road coming in there. Future works in this area will include the bus loop that will be starting to take shape later this year. So as far as the traction power substations, or the TPSSs, there are 5 in the east. All 5 are installed today. They're undergoing testing. The 2 westmost substations are the most advanced as far as testing goes, and so really the energy and the focus now is on the 3 eastmost substations to get the different tests done and make sure that they're operational and ready to be used to provide power. The catenary overhead installation is progressing very nicely, so it's broken into different zone controls along the east alignment as well as the west. The zone control that takes us from Blair Station to Montreal Station is complete. That was a necessary prerequisite to get that train move, which took place earlier this week. We are now focusing efforts east of Montreal, so the next zone control takes us from Montreal to Jeanne d'Arc. That is slated to be complete by mid-March. Some more views of catenary work taking place, so installation and regulation. And we have one more photo as well. In this one, maybe I'll point out on the right, the device there, the yellow device, is being used to measure both the height and the stagger of the overhead lines. So the stagger lets you know the offset from center line, and then the height is obviously a very important criteria. So here's some photos of the train move. So this took place overnight, Sunday night into Monday morning. It was sort of a little bit delayed to get us going as far as getting all of our safety gates met and checks in place. But the operation itself was very smooth, very successful. It's a slow train move by design to make sure that you're checking as you're moving at walking speed, that move from Blair right out to Montreal. And so the train is currently in place by Montreal Station. It will be going back west to Blair this evening. And we're looking at scheduling another move sometime in March. So overview of east activities. Currently winter 2024, as we mentioned, we're doing the starting of train testing. Through 2024, we'll be progressing work at all stations. In the spring of this year, we'll be completing that OCS installation, which is really progressing from west eastwards. And by summer of this year, we're hoping to have the stations complete. So for traffic and mobility impacts, we have different impacts on obviously different sort of roadways and thoroughways around the east end. For Highway 174, we can expect continual lane and ramp closures throughout the duration of the project to get us to completion. So we have closures needed to do civil works, for example, along the drainage on the edge of the highway to help us get access to complete some station works and some OCS works. As far as Montreal Road, we are in final configuration, but we do have more stages to get us to completion of works. There's utility works to come, there's final line painting to come, and so there will be some more impacts in that area. Jeanne d'Arc Boulevard, so that's where we saw the resurfacing works taking place. The 4 lanes are down to 2. We will maintain 2 lanes throughout, though those lanes will shift. So right now the 2 open traffic lanes are on one side of the bridge. They will shift to the other side of the bridge in the next stage. And in the final stage, the 2 open traffic lanes will be on the outside lanes while we work on the median in the center. Orleans Boulevard and Champlain Street. In both cases, we have a long-term lane closure there to give us the laydown to complete the station. So we have that space for both people access and materials and equipment. As well, there may be some short-term sort of localized closures to get little scopes of work done. We can move into next slide. So just an overview of the East project schedule and an update. So now Q1 of 2024, we are in systems installation. We're also simultaneously working on the system-wide commissioning. We have CBTC, or the Communication-Based Train Control Commissioning and Safety Case underway, and that will be progressing through to the end of the year. There's the operations training that's sort of staggered slightly behind and takes place into early 2025. And that's followed by the handover from EWC to the city. At that point, we have trial running, which will require a minimum of 3 weeks, as we have a consistent 3-week success rate that we need to achieve for that check mark. And then lastly, there's the trial operations piece, where the project solely sits with the city to be doing the sort of trial operations and maintenance, and make sure that we're ready for a successful opening to the public for passenger service. So that takes us to the end of the east. We'll move into the west. We'll start at Blair and move, at Tunney's Pasture and move westwards. So Tunney's Pasture, what's taking place now is sort of investigative work, planning work, getting ready for some tie-ins that will be taking place in 2025. As well, we have plinth construction that should be starting later in the spring in this area. Next up, Westboro Station. So here the exterior walls are complete, as you can see here. The invert slab, or the floor, is complete as well. This has recently been handed over to PCL. PCL is the station subcontractor in this area. And so now it's their scope of work to continue the concrete works in this area. Next station, Kitchissippi. So similarly, we're doing concrete works. You can see the concourse slab preparation underway here, as well as some mechanical and electrical rough-ins. We can expect, due to some utility works and some tie-ins that we need to do, road closure in the area, as well as a shifting of the multi-use pathway. It will be maintained throughout, but it will need to be shifted slightly. And so those works will be coordinated and communicated well in advance. Sherbourne Station, we have similar progress level at Sherbourne and the next station of New Orchard, where we're continuing concrete works and mechanical and electrical reference. So a view in New Orchard, similar sort of progress update here. So cut and cover progress in general. For the Parkway Tunnel, we've had very good progress behind us. So at the start of the year now, we can say that we have some long sections of the tunnel that are complete. So floor, inverts, walls, as well as roof. The main area or part of the Parkway Tunnel where the works remain are in the west end, so sort of west of Ambleside. That's where energy is focused now. There are 2 different sets of traveler systems. So the traveler system is a very, very cool and innovative custom project formwork system that allows the walls and the roof of the tunnel to be poured simultaneously. And so we have 2 of those systems working outwards to complete the end of the west end of the Parkway Tunnel. So in this case, we're seeing the east end of the Parkway Tunnel. So we're looking we're east of Sherbourne looking westwards. The roof is complete, as you can see here. You can also see the Parkway roadway in its temporary configuration. And so we'll move on. There's more cut and cover progress photos from down below. So here we can see at a portal where the wall is done, the roof is curing. We have another view inside. So this is inside a single track. So the eastbound and the westbound have their own individual tunnels. The next step of work here is to do the dry fire line installation, as well as get the plinth dowels installed so that we can build plinths and then install track works. So it's really starting to take shape inside. Another view of the cut and cover work, so sort of different stages of progress. On the left, we have a stair tower here, as well as you can just see the supportive excavation in place. Invert slab is poured. Next steps here would be waterproofing, getting the walls constructed. If we jump all the way to the right end, here we see a false work system in place to support a roof structure pour. And in the center, again, a completed section of tunnel. So now moving west into Lincoln Field Station. This is the most advanced station in the west. Here we're currently working on testing, commissioning, on installing communication devices, fire alarm devices. Other scopes in this area, south of Carling, we've started the track switches. So that's a very exciting step or progress to see taking shape on site. We can go into the next photo. So obviously this is a very interesting station in that this represents the split between the line that runs south to Algonquin and then the line that runs out to Moody. So here there are 3 platforms, one that serves the combined line northwards, one that goes south, and one that goes west. And now for the flyover. So flyover main works taking place here are the installation of the plinths to then ultimately receive the direct fixation track works. Iris Station, here the main activities are really testing and commissioning and getting in the canopy glazing. And then Algonquin, our southmost station. This is the second most advanced station in the west. Here the activities include testing, commissioning, installing the elevators, installing signs. And now we'll jump heading in west from Queensview. So Queensview, here we see the pedestrian bridge. The bridge itself, the slabs are complete. So the precast slabs were installed over the highway lanes with lane closures. There was a concrete topping poured. Next steps for that pedestrian walkway will be canopy installation as well as lights. For the station itself, we're continuing with testing, commissioning, mechanical and electrical works. We have a few more photos of Queensview, just given that it's sort of an interesting station with that pedestrian bridge. So now we can see the trench here down below. And then one more from a different angle with a section of wall there that's carried behind those tarps. And so if we continue westward, we have the Pinecrest Trench. So here as well, the floor or the inverts are poured. And now we're working on walls and sump. Pinecrest Station is next. Here it's mainly testing and commissioning activities as well as some glazing. Bayshore Station, so here the sort of critical activity is continuing the backfilling around the deep tunnel that's here, and that involves as well removing the supportive excavation. And once that is done, we'll have that area opened up to build out the guideway. Moody Station, so here testing and commissioning as well as drainage works, and then later this year we'll see the new bus loop in this area construction begin. Track work, so in general, at this point in time, we're working from Moody eastwards. As well, we have the direct fixation or the plinths that we're working on the flyover that we mentioned earlier. We have the dowel starting for the plinths in the cut and cover tunnel of the Parkway, and we have that switch that is taking shape just south of Carling Bridge. And so as far as track works goes, by about March of this year, we should see active track works installation taking place, especially if this weather holds up. So there should be a lot of progress starting soon. Now at the LMSF, on the track side, the tracks are laid, mainly complete. The activity left there on the track side is welding. As far as the buildings go, we're doing commissioning and working towards building occupancies. And so upcoming west activities in March of this year, plinth construction to continue or to really pick up in the cut and cover tunnels once the dowels are all installed. Summer of this year, commissioning of the light maintenance storage facility, or LMSF. Summer of this year as well, final completion of the cut and cover concrete work, which will be a very big milestone to have behind us. And summer again of this year, commissioning of the Pinecrest Stormwater Pond. So it will be wonderful to have those MUPs open and that space able to be used by the public. So traffic and mobility impacts in the west. We have two slides on this. So starting at Carling, right now we're in a temporary configuration there. So there are future works to come to get us improved connectivity and sort of final configuration. Coordination to come with future city projects as well, as there will be other road works taking place along Carling that we'll need to coordinate around. For the transitway from Pinecrest to Bayshore, the transitway itself is closed, is obviously now an active guideway construction site, and buses are detoured onto the highway. At the 417 and the Pinecrest interchange, so this is obviously MTO territory, we are doing heavy coordination with the ministry. Next sort of closure to anticipate in that area is going to be closure of the south to west ramp later this year. Moving on, 417 and the Richmond interchange, there as well, we have lots of activities planned for this year, including snow wall construction, and so there will be closure at least of a lane by the east north south ramp. Transitway Iris to Baseline, again here the transitway is closed to buses as it's an active construction site and buses are detoured. Moving on. Corkstown Road, so here there will be closures as required to complete different pieces of work in this area. Kitchissippi McCann, or what was known as the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway, is currently down to 2 lanes in different areas. We can expect similar closures to last for the next 2 years or so as we complete the Cleary Underpass, which is more or less a big box culvert to allow pedestrian crossing, as well as the final alignment of the parkway itself. Irish Street, we have the bulk of the work at this area behind us, so there will be some small closures to come, but really minor in nature. And Richmond Road, here we can expect some significant impacts. So there's lots of works to come in this area to get us in our final configuration. We're still trying to confirm the best approach for timing of all of the remaining works here. So again, once details are known, they'll be shared. So overview of the West project schedule. We have the Moody Light Maintenance Facility completion by the end of this year, so including all the buildings of that location. The Parkway Tunnel final completion, which will be very exciting, into the middle of next year. Completion of track and systems installation going through to the end of 2025. The communications-based train control commissioning and safety case starting mid this year, leading into mid of 2026. Then that will be overlapped with the operations training. Again, we'll have the handover to City, at which point we'll get into trial running, make sure we have a successful trial running, and then we move into the trial operations phase where we're practicing the operations as well as the maintenance prior to passenger service.
Very good, thank you, Jocelyn. Sur la ligne Trillium, ligne 2, ligne 4, les travaux de construction
On line 2 and 4, the final construction work and the commissioning is going very well. The signalization and train control are almost all done. Additional trials will be done to show the integration of all systems.
We are down to the last few steps on the Trillium line. The progress has been very good. You'll see on the photos, I'll give you the first photo here, just to give you on the next slide, Bayview Station. So when we spoke to you in the fall, there's the pedestrian walkway on the bottom of the page. We were going to treat that as a piece of deferred work. That's now going to be complete and ready for the developer when they show up to do that work. A lot of the final paving in this area is complete. Last year, we were able to get a number of trees in place. So this is kind of in the final throes. We're not quite there in terms of occupancy. So the final step to put this station into service is public occupancy. And we're going to do that following completion of the integrated testing of the SCADA control system and moving those into the control center. So it's kind of the last step is to move everything into our active control center. We're trying to kind of hold that off because we don't want to interrupt the active transit system with alarms and beeps and buzzes from an incomplete fire system, from an incomplete SCADA system. So once that testing is done, we can move into the control center, we can turn on those systems, and we can get occupancy for the stations. And that's kind of the theme for all the stations. So previously we talked about stations and station occupancy being on the critical path. It is no longer one of the critical drivers for completion of the system. We go to the next slide. Just kind of a look from the platform there. You're actually looking, there's a walkway that goes around, a fully covered walkway that goes around to the second platform. So one of the big operational changes from the prior operation was to add a second platform. So what we see in service, a lot of, this happens a lot on stage 1 as well, is if we have a medical incident or we have a train that needs to be cleaned or there's something going on with the train, we can now stop the train at Bayview and we can continue the service. In the prior configuration, if we stopped a train at Bayview, we had to stop the entire system. So we've slowly added in redundancy to the system to make it more efficient and give us some kind of operational flexibility. So this is a look at the platform level. Obviously that's Bayview, the main platform for Confed Line is just to the right there. If you go to the next slide. So Corso Italia, you see on the kind of adjacent to the street, they've rebuilt the sidewalk there. They're actually in the process of demobilizing a lot of the construction fencing. Landscaping's been put in. There's a number of new trees that are in this area. The pathway's been restored. You see the right-hand side, the development for Ottawa Community Housing is under construction. They're doing utility work at that space. And then on the left-hand side, you see the old bread factory. There's a development application in place to redevelop that. So a great new station. It's largely complete, again, save and except for occupancy at this location. If If you go to the next slide, just a kind of a look from the platform level. So it's all there. There's new bus information signs, which is kind of that black sign you see in the middle. On the left, you see the fare vending machines ready to go. If you look through the coiling grill, you can see the fare gates. So it's all there. It's pretty much wrapped up. You know, it's literally wrapped up. We're looking just to kind of unwrap it and open it later this year. You go to the next slide. So Dow's Lake Station, again, the trees and landscaping has been done. There's some final work on, there's one kind of primary set of stairs to get down to the platform. There's some remaining work to do on that set of stairs. Otherwise, you know, this station's been upgraded with a second elevator bank, so redundant elevators at this location, which is very good. And the fare gates have been put back in place. And so everything's, again, we're kind of in wrap-up mode at this station. If you go to the next slide. Carlton, so Carlton has been in decent shape for a while, partly because we retained some of the existing structure there. We are kind of doing the final landscaping. You see on the left-hand side, you know, the plaza area in front of the station is largely complete. You know, we're waiting for the final snow to melt and things to clear off to kind of finish it off and really kind of make it look good. But otherwise, the station is in great shape. If you go to the next slide, please. So Rita River Bridges, so obviously the one in the at the top of the page, that's the original rail bridge that T-Next essentially they rehabilitated. So they stripped down the paint and repainted it and you know, added new structural members where they needed to, added an additional guardrail on the one side. Previously it was just had a guardrail on one side of the bridge, and so it made kind of walking up there a bit scary, but now the guardrail is on both sides. In the foreground, obviously, the Rita River pedestrian bridge. People are very excited to get this going. So we have the handrails installed on the bridge now. We're waiting for the final electrical connection to get the lighting working. And then, you know, we've been working with the contractor. There's a final surface treatment that we've requested them to do to improve the waterproofing on the deck surface and a couple of minor defects like that. So that final surfacing on the deck is really meant to kind of protect the life of the bridge. We think that's an important step. It's something that, you know, we've kind of gone back and forth with them on, but as soon as we get to kind of above zero temperature, then we can start to schedule that work, do the decking, and then we'll be off to the races in terms of being able to open that bridge to the public. We don't want to get in a situation where we open it and then we close it back down to come back and do the surfacing, so we really just want to get that surface treatment done, and then we'll be ready to open that bridge. If you go to the next slide. So Mooney's Bay, so again, here we're in very good shape. This is very well advanced. The multi-use pathway you see there, this is the one that we added the lighting to connect to the neighborhood. Not a lot of activity at this location anymore. We'll be ready to get occupancy for that station in the near future. If you go to the next slide. So Walkley Station, so I know there's still a little bit of kind of back and forth on that particular MUP that runs along the station there, so we're trying to get that opened up as soon as possible. Again, this station's been in an advanced state for a long period now. Just outside of the right-hand side of the picture, there used to be kind of a berm and different things. That's all been cleaned up. On the left-hand side, there's new ditching and new fencing that's put in place, and so it's all in very good shape at this location. If you go to the next slide. So Greenboro Station, again, this is where we had doors open last year, so no major activity at this location. It's been in very good shape. Go to the next slide, please. So there's a couple slides here where I just want to, I'll talk to you a little bit about kind of the operation of the trains and the airport train. What you're seeing here is there's essentially a third track, or we call it the pocket track. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see you'll see kind of the pattern of movements here. So when an airport train arrives, it leaves the airport, goes to Uplands, and then stops at South Keys. It will stop at this station, and then it will offload its passengers, and it will essentially pull out of the way into the pocket track. The next northbound train will go all the way to Bayview. So people coming from the airport are essentially stepping off the airport train onto a platform. They catch the next northbound train, and then they get onto that train. So it should be a fairly simple transfer, just to get off one and get on the very next northbound train. Similarly, if you're going the other way, the first southbound train should arrive from Bayview at the platform. So if you want to go to the airport, you would step off that train, wait on the platform, and the train that you see sitting in the middle of the pocket track will then leave the pocket track, pick the people up at South Keys, and take them to the airport. So this is there's an interplay between the airport link, the back and forth, and the mainline traffic. But we've timed it such that it's alternating. So you get off one, you get on the other. So it should be as seamless as possible. I know it's not the same as a one-seat ride, but I think in this situation, for the volumes of ridership that we're expecting, this is a very good approach. And so this is kind of the pattern that you'll see if you're at Southeast Station. If you go to the next slide. So Leitrim Station, so this is, again, the station's been in great shape. What we've been following mostly is the progress of the park and ride. So you see on the right-hand side there, on the lower right, the gray building is the bus operator building. So that's where bus operators will be able to be based out of that location, start and end their shifts there, take their breaks there, washroom facilities, all of that. The bus loop that goes around the bus operator building, we are going to implement a fare paid zone in this area. So if you come from the bus, you'll be able to walk directly onto the train. If you come and you park at Leitrim Station, you'll have to go through the fare gates to get up to the platform. So the focus, the big effort of work now is really the bottom left. If you go to the next slide, I think there are a couple of photos of the bus loop testing. So transit operations and transit planning did a great job of getting out there. I think it was roughly 50 people, 20 buses, testing all the movements, buses getting stuck, buses passing other buses, buses in and out of the intersection. So they did that, I think, a month ago now at this location, just to kind of make sure that there's no hiccups. We want to do the full test of the loop to make sure that we identify any issues with shelters, any issues with curb lines, make sure that it's ready to go for the operators. We did identify a couple of things that we'll be able to improve, and so that went very well. That was a successful test. So now that that's complete, it's really about waiting for the weather to turn, and then we'll finish the rest of the park and ride to make all those spots available for future users. If you go to the next slide. So Bowesville Station, again, same thing that happened at Leitrim, but it just happened this past weekend where we did the bus loop testing. It's the same configuration here. If you arrive on the bus, you'll be able to walk directly up to the train platform. If you ride and park at the location, you'll have to go through the fare gates. And there is a kind of a way that we can control traffic flows such that when traffic is not, or train movements are not happening, you can still use the fare gates to get into the bus area. So the bus loop testing went very well. We tested here, we tested at Limebank. We're just in the process now of energizing kind of all the lighting and the cameras and the telephone systems in the park and ride area. So that's kind of one of the last integration activities we need to do to bring all those cameras online so that we're ready to put that park and ride into service. If you go to the next, here's a bit of a photo there of obviously, one of the big kind of drivers for this bus loop testing is to have warm enough temperatures to be able to put down the line markings. And so here you see that the line markings are in place, and that enabled them to do that bus loop test. So that was very good. And that's the same thing that we're waiting on in terms of the intersection of Bowesville and Earl Armstrong, is to be able to do the line painting. Once the line painting's in place, then we can activate the signals at intersection. The other two intersections in the area, there's a new main road intersection off of Earl Armstrong to get to Limebank, and a new bus access intersection off of Limebank. Those will come a little bit later. We don't need those right away because it's not going to be in service. So if you go to the next slide. So here we are at the end of the line. This is, again, you see the line paintings there. This is obviously during a construction day, not during the bus loop testing. The station's in very good shape. We've been there a number of times over the winter, so very happy with how that station came out. And then you see in the distance, off just at the top right of the photo, you see the new main road there. So that's also been tested. There's some additional kind of retrofit work to do to that particular road to get it to where we need it to be. But again, based on the weather and the timing, we should be able to have that road in service to coincide with opening, and there should be multi-use pathway access as well. So all the access at this station should be ready to go. Here's a shot of the bus loop testing. So you see, it's a big activity. This particular day, they tested the bus loop here, and they interplay with the bus loop at Bowesville. So kind of looping around here, looping over to Bowesville, looping back. Again, checking all the different scenarios. A bus gets stuck in an intersection, a bus gets stuck in a layup position, a bus stalls, or just multiple buses kind of all interacting with each other and being able to pass each other. So making sure that loop is working and ready to go. So that was, we're very glad to get that done, to be able to identify any issues as early as possible. Here you have Upland Station. So in the foreground, you see the tree cells there in place, the plaza work. There's some final plaza work being done. The way this station is set up, there's actually a faregate zone. So you walk through the faregates to get up to the platform level, but there's also a pathway under the station to get to the other side. So where you see on the right-hand side, there's a pile of dirt there, there's some parking area. That's a future development location for the airport authority. So it could be future parking, future building, but there is kind of a way to get across the station without having to pay. You can just kind of walk through. Right now, that'll be closed, but in the future, that will be opened up once there's kind of a need. I imagine there'll be, at the very least, parking growth, if not some kind of building growth in that location. And then the airport, station's been in great condition for a long time, so there's not a lot to report on there. Go to the next slide. So there's a few slides here where we'll talk about kind of where we are in the program, what's upcoming. You see these kind of Q2 dates. So obviously completion of testing, commissioning, trial running, station completion, completion of park and rides. If you go to the next slide. That was a teaser for the schedule slide. Just in terms of the mobility impacts, I think it's still the same place we've always been. There's a few kind of multi-use pathways that are still being detoured. Obviously, the Osgood Trail, people are pretty excited about getting that Osgood Trail back, and so we are looking to get that done. There are some crossings along that trail, so a crossing at Uplands, a pedestrian crossing at Uplands, at Leitrim, that we need to kind of put in place, but otherwise that trail will be reinstated and there'll be very good north-south access there. Go to the next slide. Same thing, so we talked about the intersection of Earl Armstrong, Bowesville. We talked about the two new intersections at Limebank and to access the Limebank station, one at Limebank and one at Earl Armstrong. Go to the next. So we'll talk about this slide just for a few minutes. So I spoke briefly about the stations and occupancy. So typically this is, you do a walkthrough of the stations to make sure all the accessibility features are working, to make sure all the fire systems are working, lighting, handrails. There's a whole walkthrough list that Building Code Services does. Across all of the stations, we're in very good shape. We're down to kind of defects and issues. The last two things that are holding up occupancy, getting the actual certificate, is really turning on the telephones so they go to an active desk in the control center, turning on the fire alarm system so they go to an active desk in the control center, staffing the control center 24 hours a day. And we're trying to get it to a point where it's a flip of the switch. So we want to do as much as possible in the field to make sure we're not getting any spurious or errant alarms going to the control center. Once we're satisfied with that, we would turn on the telephones, they'll go to the special constables, we'll turn on the alarms, it'll go to the rail controllers, and then at that point we can just go back to Building Code Services and TSSA for the elevators to get that approved. And so we are holding on that for the moment, but in terms of the progress in the field, very good, we're in a very good state. Systems installation and signal testing. So systems installation, save and except for the park and rides where we're having to energize them, add the cameras, add the telephones to those parking lots. The majority of the communication systems in the stations are online, where I think we're at roughly 82% now. As we see those park and rides get energized, that'll kind of bring the total up. Then we'll have all the cameras working, all the phones working, all the platform signs working. The next step, and kind of one of the final steps, is really to make sure that the integrated system works, that the signal system is working, and that we get to reliable performance out of the system. We have seen the performance improve over the last 3 to 4 months. It's odd to say, but we were fortunate that we got some very good snowfalls this year to allow us to really flush out issues with the switch heaters, flush out issues with the switches. And so we did do some final kind of tweaks to both of those systems. And we're at a point now where I think the team is very comfortable with the performance of the switches, which is on a single track system where you're passing, those switches need to work. When they stop working, you need to shut the system down. On something like the Confed, you can lose a switch and you can still kind of move around it. There's some flexibility. On the Trillium line, you don't have that room for flexibility. And so we're very pleased with the performance of the switches based on the recent tests and I would say slight modifications we've done. As part of this program, we've identified a software change that was required to the Stadler vehicles. That's in place now. They're testing it on 3 vehicles. We just want to make sure that that platform, I call it the software platform and the operating system of the trains is solid, that we're not going into service with a bunch of bugs and things. And so they made a change. We're monitoring that change. If that works well, we'll apply it across the fleet. So that's in good shape. The signal system, we did identify a defect that required a change. That change is expected in mid to late April, but that's kind of one of these things. As we do the testing, we identify these issues, we apply the fix. And so that's going well. Assuming that the supplier is able to deliver that fix and it works, then that puts us in a good place for verifying that the signal system is working. We do need to demonstrate. It's something that we haven't done yet, partly linked to the training, which I'll get to in a second. This full service, 12-minute headway consistently every day. Like that's still something that we're working towards. We haven't done that yet. And that's tied, in large part to the training program. We need to train the operators. We need to give them time and space to be able to learn the system, to use the system, to be confident in operating the system. Similarly, on the controllers, we need to give them access, time using the system, experience, to give them the time and space to really develop their experience and develop their confidence, develop their proficiency in using that system. So in terms of the training program for the operators, we probably, I would say, roughly 3 months solid period of training period left to go to get them to a point where we have a solid large pool of people who are able to operate those trains consistently, reliably. So we're looking at a 3-month window to get that training done. The controllers are slightly behind that, but we're looking at opportunities to not, I wouldn't say speed it up, that's the wrong word, to make sure that we're maximizing our use of the access to the system so that they finish closely behind that. So we say 3 months for the operations and maintenance training to wrap up 3 months from today. So based on that, if that goes well, again, has to go well, things have to go right, then we would go into trial running. Trial running is minimum 3 weeks, but we are going to take as long as we need to demonstrate that. So it could be, minimum 3 weeks, but it could double that, it could be longer. At this point, I can't tell you how much time we need to allocate to that, which is why on the slide you see a bit of this kind of start and end. These are all just kind of windows of time of when it could happen. So if the training goes well, trial running goes well, it gives you a sense of when we could potentially open, but I can't really provide any more certainty than that at this time because it's human beings and we're training them and, it's technical systems that need to be reliable and functional and as much as we've tried to flush out those issues, we're not in 100% control of the outcomes. So that's where we are in terms of the program. So 3 months roughly for the training period, then probably a month for trial running, and then we would look at an opening date. So that's kind of where we land with this schedule. That doesn't mean September. It doesn't, it also equally, we've lost April. So, we're still kind of trying to work out where we're going to land, and that depends on the training program and some of these final reliability issues with the signal system and the train systems. So that's that slide. Then the last thing, I guess, every light rail subcommittee, we've kind of talked about this list of issues, and the order has changed a little bit. But primarily, we always, as we get to the end of these projects, and as we're running trains kind of consistently and daily, and there's civil crews who are trying to fix things, we do need to be very cognizant of when we need to give the builder time to fix things. Sometimes we see people wanting to do the right thing to fix something, but then they're running out onto the track in the middle of the day. It's like we need to just kind of take our time, go slowly, and make sure that we still prioritize safety during this final step of the project. The integration testing and system performance. So I've already flagged to you a couple of minor things that we found. We need to grow the reliability over the coming months in order to put the system confidently into service. Talked about the operator controller training completion, which is a major driver of the program, in parallel with performance testing. And then the remaining works, station occupancy, park and ride facilities, some of these things are I would say, easier to have certainty around, and they're just a function of time rather than a function of performance. Regulatory requirements, safety certification with our safety auditor, Transport Canada, these things are in hand. So 4, 5, 6 are decent. Number 6, obviously, we still have the Ottawa Hospital, which is building their parking garage over the line, and that will, absolutely cause interruption to service in the future as they continue to build that. There will be times where we need to stop and allow them access over a weekend period to finish their structure. And we've seen, I think there's 8 or 9 other active developments in progress that are basically abutting or have the opportunity to affect train operations, and so that's something that we're watching very closely. Good news story, that there's 8 developments on the Trillium line that are in close proximity to the line. Equally, for the construction team, they need to watch that, monitor that, make sure that the right controls are in place to get that delivered safely. Let's go to the next slide. So again, this is how you reach us if you need to, a variety of ways. And then the last slide, we're happy to take questions now on all projects.
Okay, thank you. Going to open it up to members first and then to other councillors. Councillor Leeper to start. Thank you.
Sorry, it's not my tech day today. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you.
Fantastic, thank you. So I have 2 questions for you. Thank you very much for a comprehensive update. The first question, we don't hear a lot about the train sets. How are those coming online?
So, Mr. Chair, I assume it's in relation to the Stage 2 train sets?
Yeah, so on the Confederation line.
The Stage 2 train sets for the Confederation Line East and West extension. So we continue to receive those vehicles from Alstom. They continue to be delivered to site. I believe the last number, we were up to 14 that have been delivered to site and put into service. So they're actively being used as part of the fleet on Stage 1. We have another 4 or 5 that are expected to be added to the fleet this year, which will kind of push us into the 52, 53 mark. To open the east, the current requirement is 40 vehicles during peak service. And so by the end of the year, we should have in the low 50s, and that should be more than sufficient to deliver the service for the east.
Is the requirement to pin the nuts as part of the axle issue slowing things down at all?
In terms of the production of the additional Stage 2 vehicles, it's not affecting that particular defect is not affecting the production. In fact, it's the opposite. The availability of more Stage 2 vehicles has enabled the maintainer to kind of stay on top of inspections and improve their spare ratio of vehicles significantly such that they're able to, keep the fleet running.
Okay. Can we get a slide on that in future updates, a box score on vehicle delivery and production?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. The second question that I have is just a smaller one. You mentioned on the Trillium line, I think it was a communication system defect for which the supplier is hoping to deliver a fix in April. Can you provide us with some more details on that? What was the defect? What is the fix, and what would be the challenges to delivering that fix this spring?
So the particular issue is on the signal side. It was related to how the signal system managed the operation of trains through the diamonds at Bayview and at Limebank Station. So there was an error found in a particular scenario. So on a temporary basis, they've closed one of the end platforms in order to allow the training to continue and operations to continue. So they've mitigated in the short term. That, because it affects the signal system, it does require, a significant level of testing and validation internally by the supplier before they're able to deploy it. It affects their safety certificate. So there's a series of issues that need to be addressed before we can apply that new software update. That being said, TNext is working with their supplier to advance the dates. Receiving all of the attention it requires in terms of locking in a mid to late April date or improving upon that date. So I don't think there's a lot more detail than that I can provide at this time because it's a fairly new issue.
Yes, and it's software as opposed to hardware.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation, always exciting. I just want to thank Councillor Leeper, who initiated a tour of the tunnels that we both did, and learned a lot just to walk through there and see the work that's being done that nobody can see right now because it's been all covered up. That's the section on the Kitchissippi Mikan that looks just like a big covered up. So I think I put lots of pictures in my newsletter to show people that things are moving along. And I think they need that little boost because they put up with a lot with the noise and the mess. So, and it's great to work with your team. Appreciate it. In a different section, you talked about at Dow's Lake, and I'm glad you raised it, and possible delays with the hospital blending in. And you're saying that the system could be going full go, but then it may have to be paused because of future construction, not just that, but other projects as well?
So, Mr. Chair, the hospital is going to build a part of their parking garage over the train line. When they go to, depending on the timing, when they go to lift the beams and other structures and build over the guideway for a period of time, we would need to stop train movements under that activity. So we can't run trains while they're building that particular roadway over the guideway. And so ideally, and that can happen for any development, anytime you overbuild, you're going to have that issue. The adjacent builds, like close by, typically can be managed without affecting service, but an overbuild situation, you will affect service at the very least to put in controls or mitigations. So if we're in service and their project progresses and they get to the point where they need to put in some structure over the guideway, we would need to pause service in the northern section for example, for a weekend, for a period of time, or overnight. We don't know all their construction means and methods, but I expect that there would be at least a weekend closure of that northern section to allow them to do that work.
Okay, that sounds better than what I thought. It sounded like it was going to be a long closure. Thank you. I think I'm kind of stealing Councillor Brockington's thunder, but I wanted to ask about the Rideau River Bridge, and a couple of questions. One, we just had a pedestrian bridge built across the Ottawa, well, not built, we refurbished the Commander Bridge. I want to know if the Rideau River Bridge is going to be all year round when it opens.
So, Mr. Chair, at this point, that particular bridge connects to a multi-use pathway that's not winter maintained. On that basis, it would not be winter maintained.
Okay, and there's
opportunity to revisit that. That will certainly, that's part of the package of pathways and multi-use connections that is discussed as part of working groups. We're doing some final, I would say, modifications to that structure to ensure that it could be winter maintained if a policy decision is made to winter maintain it.
Okay, I sure hope so, because it's required. And I know Councillor Brockington's going to take this further, so I'll leave it at that. But that was a concern after seeing what, I just made an assumption with the Commander Bridge. Geez, wouldn't it be all year round? All other bridges are. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gower.
Thanks, Chair. The connection to the airport at Greenboro, what do you anticipate as a typical wait time for someone arriving from the airport or heading to the airport, the wait time between trains for the transfer?
So at South Quay Station, where the transfer to the airport occurs, it should be, there'll be a train arriving every 12 minutes on the main line and a train arriving every other 12 minutes. So it'll be offset by up to 6 minutes.
Up to 6 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I was happy to see late Sunday evening during a snowstorm near, I guess between Bayshore and Moody, there was a crew doing some kind of work along the track. Are crews working 7 days a week around the clock, or can you give us a sense in the east, west, and south how much activity there's happening throughout the day?
There's certainly been a bit of, I would say, a slowdown over the holiday period in terms of them working on something like the Trillium line, where the contractor has given us access to the system essentially for 16 hours a day, Monday to Friday. That forces the crew, if there's any defect work, retrofit work, cleaning work, inspection work, that happens on the weekends or outside of regular hours. And so in order to complete for example, we're running trains, you need to still inspect the track, even though they're new, you would do that, overnight. So track inspections, walking inspections of the line would happen overnight. Snow clearing would happen overnight. And then on the east, again, now that we're into the train movements, and as the train movements increase, you'll see more activity on the overnight period, in part to deal with those defects and because they can't access the guideway. So we're planning, in the east, the train is planning to come back this week. There'll be a kind of a 2-week gap of train movements. The construction teams will be eager to get out there and fix any residual defects during the daytime hours to avoid having to work at night. And so they are working I don't think they're quite 24 hours a day there, but I would say in some specific locations, they are working overnights. There is work in the east where we're trying to build up the berms, so there is some movements, some overnight activity happening there, building up some berms to build additional noise walls on the south side of the highway. And then in the west, it's okay, we do have regular requests into the councillors' offices to do overnight works, and so there is kind of a mix there, but I wouldn't say it's like 1,000 people working at night. We're trying to manage access to the guideway and kind of spread the work out, but consistently across the system, you will see work at any hour, any day.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Every reasonable effort's being made to maximize the hours in the day to get things completed as quickly as possible. It's good. Yeah, I guess building on that, as councillors, we've sat in many meetings and had many updates, and I think we understand the delicate balance between wanting to move quickly, but also ensuring quality of work and every safety consideration is addressed. I got an email from a resident, and I think I appreciate where it's coming from, because from a resident's point of view, or say from a Carleton University student's point of view, this is way behind what we said at the outset. And there's all sorts of reasons why that might happen. But the question was, is there a penalty for the constructors for being so far behind the anticipated opening? And I was wondering how staff would answer a question like that. What consequences are there for the constructors for being so far behind?
So, Mr. Chair, on a contract of this nature, so on a contract where, and this, I'll just speak broadly about these types of contracts, where you have, a private company that's building the system, typically there's a requirement for them to finance or to fund the construction of that work, and they get paid back those funds once the work is complete. So we're talking about, hundreds of millions of dollars that they're financing, that they're paying for. We pay them as they go, and so there's different, depending on the contract, there's different, amounts that are withheld, but they're financing the project. So the primary kind of, pressure that's placed on them is, internally, that they need to meet those financing costs because they're not getting paid for the work. That's the primary method and the primary way that these contracts have been set up. There are, occasionally, $1 million, in stage one, we have this $1 million liquidated damage for not meeting the date. There are things like that in various forms in the contract, but the primary driver is financing of the contract.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks to staff for an update. It's good to see the progress at all three stages, east, west, and south. And just to carry Councillor Gower's point, I just want to make sure that, Mr. Morgan, you're aware of the remaining tasks that need to be done, and the Trillium line is the focus of my questions right now, but you are aware of the remaining tasks that need to be done. I think you put forward a pretty comprehensive list. And are you aware of the length of time each task takes? Do you know, from the City of Ottawa's perspective, you're part of this team, can you accurately predict you provided as part of the contractor's outline, are you aware of how long each task takes? Because this has to be built into your sort of timelines that you provide us, but is that the case?
So, Mr. Chair, in terms of the timelines, there are certain timelines that we can understand and we can surface. For example, the amount of time to train an operator is a well-known, like, discrete amount of time, and we can use that amount of time to then kind of forecast out, based on progress, how we can achieve that and complete that. So there are elements of the contract that absolutely we understand the duration of time required to undertake a task. There are other elements that we do not have visibility and we cannot control the duration of time. And the example that I gave about this software bug, that is something that I do not have full control or visibility or understanding of how much time that is going to take for them. They may need additional time, they may find other issues. So that is something that is more difficult to ascertain. And that, informs, I would say, in part, the fluidity of the schedule.
Sure, and that's a very precise example you cite, but when we're dealing with a 2-year delay for a line, the contractor, who's the expert, should be able to give for every single task as part of a project the minimum amount of time estimated up to a maximum amount of time estimated, and that all gets factored into a schedule. So when we get presentations, we should be able to still, I believe, accurately predict when the line gets delivered to the public, and you're still providing ranges to us. So I just want to ask about the bridge. The bridge, when it was first installed in the summer of 2022, had about a 4-month timeline remaining to complete works, and I was informed that as long as the snow didn't arrive early, we would be opening in December of 2022. Obviously, that didn't happen. Then, through a line of questioning in 2023, in the spring, April of 2023, Councillor Menard and I were informed that timelines were such that we would be opening the bridge in August of 2023. Those timelines, of course, were not missed. In fact, all through the summer, members of the public would write to Councillor Menard and I, who were at Vincent Massey Park or at Carleton, saying there was absolutely no workers on site. Zero. Not every day, but through the peak of summer, there were many days where there was no progress at all happening there. So who's providing that oversight? This is one example of the larger line. Who's in charge? Who holds the contractors accountable for not meeting these timelines? They didn't meet 2022. They didn't meet 2023. Today you say we've got some, I'll just call them aesthetic matters left, connecting electrical and finishing the waterproofing once we get above zero. But this has gone on way too long. So at the end of the day, for this particular project, where does accountability lie? Who's responsible?
Mr. Chair, this is a topic that we've discussed at length at this committee, that that scope of work and the delivery of that work is tied to substantial completion of the overall project. And in this case, we've given the contractor the authority to essentially prioritize their works. Much of the remaining works last year was related to civil activity. They prioritized their crews and their access to crews to other areas linked to the primary transit system. So it was not. So it's absolutely with the contractor and we've given them that flexibility. We did not, impose a specific timeline for them. We've been trying to provide updates as we go on kind of expected or forecast timelines. But it's fully within their remit to adjust the timeline of when they do this and when they deliver the work. Now, is that a lesson learned for the future, that this method of bundling these smaller projects with the bigger project? The intent was always to do that due to time and space considerations as well as to cost efficiencies. But it may be something that in the future you reconsider, because it is certainly a small detail in a much larger project.
Thank you. So just so I'm clear, the contract with the Trillium Line builders, who also included the bridge, basically states, and I'm using layman's language, the expectation for the bridge's delivery coincides with the opening of the line, meaning since the line hasn't opened yet, they are not going to be penalized for not opening the bridge because the contract says you don't have to open yet until the actual line opens up. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, there's no specific call out for that bridge to apply like a penalty or something. It's part of the larger project, and they need to, it's not about it being in service so much as them achieving substantial completion. So it's part of their substantial completion package. That's their obligation, is to finish it by substantial completion.
Right, so as long as we continue to delay the line's opening, the bridge doesn't have to open per the contract. So that's why the public, this is a huge head scratcher for them. You had mentioned that we still have 3 solid months for operators to be training on the line. We've been running trains on the line for quite some time. So can you clarify what training have operators already gone through on the Trillium line, and why is an additional 3 months still required?
Mr. Chair, so in terms of the pool of operators, they will go through classroom training, rule book training. They will go, then they will step and they will do into the yard. They'll step onto the vehicles on the yard. They'll do Alstom training in the yard. They'll do Stadler training in the yard. And so we've built up a small pool of those operators, and those operators have been used as part of the testing commissioning program. You know, at some point you do need the final system, the final signal system, to reach a level of maturity such that you can actually, you know, train them on, you know, the expected experience that they will have in service. We've absolutely been training operators for some time. There's been a smaller pool for the last couple of years who've had a lot of time on those trains, but they've had a lot of time on those trains in an environment where the signal system wasn't finished, where the operator displays weren't finished because the signal system wasn't ready. So, you know, it's one thing to train staff on a system that's incomplete. It's another to train them on a system that's fully complete. So we have a pool now. You know, there's a number that are already certified, but we need to grow that pool to get to the roughly 50 mark. And on the operator side, and then on the controller side, we need to grow that pool to roughly 12. And so now we're kind of in full training mode. We have access to the system 16 hours a day, and we're trying to build up that pool to the numbers that we need to offer the service.
Very good. So just the timelines, you said solid 3 months of training for the operators. So that's March, April, May. Mm-hmm. Trial running 3 to 4 weeks. That's June. So we don't, the best case scenario is, you know, not before Canada Day, an opening. But then you've got probably some buffer for sort of delaying at that point. So ideally, you'd probably want to be up and running well before the school season starts to make sure the line's running well. You've, again, tested things out with live folks. So you're not prepared at this point, at this meeting, to say you're hoping to get this up and running by August 1st? Is that fair question to ask?
I mean, I think you've described it well in terms of the remaining works, but at this time, I'm not able to specify a date.
Okay, and again, as the person in charge on behalf of the city, who's working with our contractor, who knows the remaining tasks, this is why we're at the very end of this process, and we still can't share with the public an accurate target date to opening. I can't understand that at this point, gone this far, with so little left to be done, why we can't say, we're the ones in charge, we're the ones paying the contractors to do this work, and with all the meetings with the contractor, and they're aware of what has to happen, and hopefully a mild spring to get out there and finish work that needs to be done. To me, at this point, I just can't understand that. So I certainly don't want to continue to raise false expectations. We're opening this date, certainly what we did with phase 1. I don't want to go through that again, but anyway, that's, I constantly hear this in my ward, and that's why I raise it today. Chair, my last question just is about Hunt Club Road and the condition of Hunt Club Road and delayed repaving by the city of Hunt Club because of ongoing work by the LRT team. So could you just clarify, please, what's the outstanding work in the vicinity of Hunt Club Road that has to be done, which is now delaying renewal work by the city until that work's done? What exactly has to happen around Hunt Club Road?
So, Mr. Chair, on Hunt Club Road, there's some final crossings that need to be put in place, which requires additional signals, which requires us to cut the road. So that work, once we get those crossings in place, so active transportation crossings, and that final work is done, then we would be in a position to request our partners in infrastructure to come back and finish the repaving through that area. I need to get it for you.
Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. My first question, I think, follows along the lines of questioning from Councillors Gower and Brockington about our ability to hold the contractor accountable to a timeline. And I do understand from the way you described it that the contractor puts pressure upon themselves by financing the project and relying on the timely repayment or the timely scheduled payment from the city so that they can remain liquid. Am I to understand if that is our carrot, sorry, if that is our stick and carrot, as it were, am I to understand that although the project is currently well beyond, well past schedule, overdue, have we, if our only ability to hold them accountable is by withholding payments, have we, at this point in this contract, held back any payments because of delays?
So, Mr. Chair, it's not about actively withholding payments. It's the fact that on their side, internally to them, they're not achieving the payments. So in this contract, it's an earned value contract. We pay them as they make progress. And so to the extent that they haven't finished, we haven't made the final payments. We haven't actively withheld payments, but we've paid for the progress that they've achieved.
Thank you. And were you saying earlier, and forgive me if I don't understand this, but were you saying earlier that the contractor has the right to reprioritize the order of work and therefore they can continue receiving scheduled payments? Was it something to that effect?
Mr. Chair, there would be flexibility in the contract for them to reprioritize, and we're basically, because we're paying based on progress, they can earn progress in different areas. It's not progress against the schedule, it's progress against specific works. And so, you know, the contractors are all the time, every day. They're reprioritizing work, reassigning crews. You know, as they get materials, as they don't get materials, they're shifting teams around. So they, you know, in a given month may make more progress in one area as compared to another.
Thank you. My other question, I want to zero in on the West project schedule update. And it's not that I don't have concerns over the other ones, but that certainly my ward is more affected by that. And for context, so with regards to the bus route review, which has had, you know, some concerns and impacts in my ward, I've been selling the bus route review based on an expectation of when certain stations will be complete on the West project line. In your presentation for both the East project schedule update and the South project schedule update, on the graph, on the timeline, there's an overlap between the phase called trial running leading to handover and the phase called trial operations passenger service. There's an overlap in those for both the South and the East project updates, where the latter one, the trial operations passenger service, typically extends a few months, weeks, whatever chunks beyond the other one. However, for the West schedule project update, and I have the slide in front of me, for the West schedule project update, you've got many phases concurrently overlapping each other at the very end of 2026. I'm not sure if there wasn't any room on the slide to project into 2027, but you've got operations training, handover to city, trial running, trial operations and passenger service all happening on one fixed point in 2026. And so my question is, may I assume, and forgive me if this is already public and I just the last one to know, but may I assume that trial operations and therefore passenger service for the West schedule should be expected several months, weeks into 2027? Because I'd like to transparently communicate that.
Mr. Chair, at this point, because that particular schedule is so far out in the future, we don't have a lot of granularity on how that might look. But I think, you know, right now the current completion date is November 6th. Then you would put 3 weeks on top of that for the trial running period. So then you're into kind of early December. Typically we try to line up the actual opening dates to a booking. So there's a lot at play there. Equally, I think, there is a lot that we are trying to learn from the east extension in terms of training, in terms of cutovers, in terms of taking the existing train sets into new territory, such that there may be opportunities in the future that schedule changes one way or another, good or bad. So I think, for now, we're just reporting that completion's the end of 2026. Could opening be pushed into early 2027? Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, Chair. Great presentation and really, really exciting to learn about all the progress that's happening. One of my first questions is, so this has been a milder than normal winter, and it's very possible that we'll have milder than normal winters in the future. How much work that goes on can't take place when we have a normal harsh winter, and have we been able to make any headway in combating those delays, even if it's just a little bit, because this winter has been milder?
Mr. Chair, the mild winter has absolutely helped. I wouldn't say, it wouldn't necessarily translate into changing the schedule at this point. It adds probably, I would say, buffer or more resilience back into the schedule. But, the big example from late last year was reopening the Pinecrest ramp. Like, that would not have happened if we'd had a harsher winter. So we were able to open that ramp only because it was a milder winter. In this intervening period, things like the intersection of Bowesville, Earl Armstrong, applying the line markings requires milder weather. So we've been able to apply line markings, or are about to, at that intersection, in the park and rides. That all allows us to do works early. It may not necessarily move the needle on the overall project, but it absolutely puts resilience back into the project. We did a walkthrough yesterday of the tunnel with the city manager, and I would say the tunnel crew on the contractor side, they've been absolutely thrilled. When it's 5 degrees out, or even -5, people are eager to show up to work and happy to work, and they make good progress as compared to when it's -35. So it was. We're seeing a lot of activity. We're not ready to move the schedule or adjust the schedule, but the mild weather has definitely benefited all 3 extensions.
Yeah, I work primarily indoors, and I feel the same when it's -5 versus -35. No, the intention of that question was like, I know it adds buffer. I know it's not going to significantly move up any timelines, but that buffer is always helpful in case of any other issues down the line, like a harsh winter next year. The second question is kind of goes back to I think what Councillor Leeper asked about the trains for stage 2. The spare ratio that you mentioned, that's improved significantly with the delivery of stage 2 vehicles, which allows us to sort of do the nut pinning for the stage 1 vehicles. Is that spare ratio of vehicles that can be used on the line? Because I raised this concern in the past where we're pushing stage 2 vehicles stage 2 vehicles into service, and therefore allowing more stage 1 vehicles to sit on a deadline or a defect line or something. And then when stage 2 does open, we'll suddenly be short of vehicles again. Is my assessment there correct or incorrect?
I mean, Mr. Chair, you have to be, the feedback is well taken. You need to be very disciplined about how you manage the fleet. And to the extent that you accept spare vehicles or have an excess of vehicles, you absolutely have to be disciplined about maintaining those, maintaining the base fleet, making sure that vehicles aren't sitting out for extended durations. So that is a point that we've raised with RTG, just to ensure that we don't, it's nice to have these spares, but a year from now, we need them all. And I think they're starting to see that, as we tested the first train in the east this past weekend. Come this summertime, we're going to need, 3 and 4 and 6 vehicles for testing on the east. And so this issue will become very real very quickly for them if they are, keeping vehicles out of service for a long term.
Okay, lastly, just a minor point of clarification, maybe for myself, maybe for everybody. The way that the contractors finance the project and when they achieve payment through progress, that's the payment that we give them is what we agree upon, right? So any delays usually, causes the contractor to incur some extra costs above and beyond what was negotiated, but the city would only pay them what was agreed upon. That's just a little extra clarification. Is that true?
Mr. Chair, subject obviously to commercial claims and other matters, it is still a fixed price contract.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Mr. Morgan, we just spent the first half of the meeting looking at the history of light rail transit in Ottawa and the project, and the difficult circumstances that came together and the frustration over contract delays and performance of the contractor, and a commissioner inquiry report telling us that and reminding us that we need, despite frustrations, despite setbacks, that we need to keep the relationship with the contractor firm, but constructive and productive so that we're moving forward. So how would you describe the relationship with the contractor presently, the pressure that they're under, the pressure that you're under to deliver this project? How would you characterize it in light of what we learned from the Commission of Inquiry?
So we have, Mr. Chair, we have a series of contractors, obviously contracts with RTG, contracts with East-West Connectors, contracts with Transit Next. Throughout, we try to, as much as possible, separate the commercial matters, the commercial claims from the day-to-day. So trying to ensure that we insulate as much as possible, and you can't always do this, if there are commercial disputes, to make sure that the field teams who are building the system are still actively cooperating, actively collaborating, working together to make sure that the system is working correctly. So does that work every day of the week, every day of the month? No, but generally I would say the relationships are productive. We are working together. Jocelyn's team, is based in the field with the contractor, with the construction crews. Every time I go out and I see them working together, they're engaged, they're sharing information, they're talking, they're finding solutions. We're actively working with other stakeholders. There's a lot of regulatory stakeholders between the MTO and Building Code Services, Fire Services that require active engagement, and her team actively helps and assists with those issues. And so I would say generally very good. There are moments, there are times when the frustrations kind of boil over, but I would say as compared to kind of past projects, the relationship is good today.
Thank you. And this is the first time I hear you talk about potentially that as a lesson learned, that we'd separate some of the multi-use pathways and what have you, so particularly those ones that aren't 100% transit oriented, and that we would separate them and put them on a different track. In my own constituency, I have a multi-use pathway. You talked about the Osgood Trail opening. I'm okay with you focusing on getting the trains operating and moving. And I guess, again, I want to hear from you that that's the number one focus is let's get the trains moving, let's get the system up and running. And again, I am concerned that we've got all these other sort of collateral supportive projects that I hope don't distract you in the core task here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Many times it's time and space, and so the secondary project is so close to the primary project that you can't avoid kind of bundling, but it is something to look at closely in the future, this idea, do you need to bundle it? Do you need to do it differently? Should it be included or not? At the end of the day, the focus is absolutely on making sure the service works. The majority of my time is on train performance, system integration, making sure the testing program is done right. And, part of, my inability to give more precise information today is, I'm not comfortable providing that more precise information until I see trains running, 20 hours a day, reliably, per the headways, per what people are expecting. Once we start to see that, then we can start looking at dates and looking at precise timelines. But the team today, the majority of the team is absolutely focused on delivering train service. Certainly all my team that are working on the Confed line, they spent an inordinate number of hours the last few months getting ready for the train move to the east, and so it was a huge win for the team. That is absolutely what they're focused on today.
Well, that's what I want to hear, because I hope you're not being pulled away into meetings to talk about policies that aren't in place. If we don't have a policy to win or maintain, then councillors can bring that forward at budget and make the pitch. And I'm sure we all have many pathways we'd like to have win or maintained. But I just am hoping your time is spent, again, on the core pieces of this, given the pressures that everyone's under to deliver. And the great disadvantage that people at students and staff at Carleton are under. So thank you for the update today. The committee item is 4.2, Stage 2 Light Rail Transit Proposal. The report recommendation is that the Light Rail Subcommittee receive this report for information. Is that received? Received. In-cabinet items, there are none. Notices of motion, I'm not aware of any. Any inquiries? Not aware of any. No other business. The next meeting is scheduled for May 31st, but we had committed that depending on the timing of the trials, that we would hold a meeting to coincide with this so that the committee would have an opportunity to hear from you in terms of the approach and ask questions on what will be obviously a very critical milestone in the project. So that may be before May 31st, let's hope so, but if not, then the next meeting will be on the 31st of May in 2024. So with that, can we move to adjourn? Carried? Carried, thank you.